Here.
Brian Chetney? You're muted, Brian. Heather Del Conte?
I'm here now.
Brandon Legault?
Hello.
Linda Serino?
Here.
Samuel Tripp?
Here.
I'm here too, just in case you're curious.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Okay, but I'm still here.
Thank you. We're going to move right to the Board of Education part of the agenda. The first item is the BOCES 2021 administrative budget. That the Board of Education approves the Board of Cooperative Educational Services for the Sale Supervisory District of Oswego County, duly presented in its tentative 2020-21 administrative budget of $7,921,915 at its 2020 annual meeting. If I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? I will have to do a roll call vote on this. Kathleen Allen?
Yes.
Brian Chetney? Brian?
Yes.
Tom Chapa?
Yes.
Heather Del Conte?
Yes.
Brandon Legault?
Yes.
Linda Serino?
Yes.
Samuel Tripp?
Yes.
Next is item 2, election of the Board of Cooperative Educational Service ballot to fill 3 3-year terms on the Board of Cooperative Educational Services to be filled at the annual election to be held on April 23rd. That would be Brian Hessick from Oswego, John Shettleland from Sandy Creek, Miss Darlene Upcraft from Mexico. If I could have a motion.
Move it.
Second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
The only discussion I would like to make sure we talked about it briefly, but that Brian is going to come and make reports to us. Did we set up a time for that and how often he's going to come and do it?
I don't think it ever got beyond the discussion. So
Okay.
I
we need to do that.
I did talk to Mr. Hessick. He said he'd be more than happy. Just let him know when you would like him to come in.
Okay. Do we want to set that now or just do it at a later date? Just have him come following every meeting to report to us?
Karen, do you know, do they meet quarterly or monthly?
I believe they meet monthly.
Okay, so maybe we can ask him to do it quarterly?
Sure. Does that work?
Well, they probably don't start meetings until the fall.
Yeah, once things get going again.
Okay, for the new election year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Kathleen Allen?
Here. Yes.
Brian Chetney?
Yes. Yes.
Tom Chapa?
Yes.
Heather Del Conte?
Yes.
Brandon Legault?
Yeah.
Linda Serino?
Yes.
Samuel Tripp?
Yes.
The last item under Board of Education is the instructional calendar for Oswego City School District 2020-21 school year. Could I have a motion?
I'll make a
Move it.
motion.
Brian, second Linda.
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Roll call?
Oh,
Do you need roll call, Karen?
You need a roll call on that, Karen, or no?
no roll call on that one, just the
Okay.
first 2 items.
Great. Thank you.
Next, we'll move to the superintendent's report with Dr. Dewey.
Okay. I have the same 3 areas that I'd like to report on as the last couple of meetings. Some of the budget conversation, as I indicated in an email earlier, would happen under personnel because it's about personnel. But I just wanted to reiterate relative to the budget, some of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. This probably has been the most challenging week for central office since the first week of the closure. Not only have we been intensely engaged in the budget, but also watching how the budget and indicators and the information from the governor and SCD come out daily and change daily. As I had indicated in the previous presentation, we really are looking at a $1.6 million budget gap because our expenditures have exceeded the slight increase in state aid to a point where we need to consider collective bargaining agreements, special education, legal services, and some other contracts that I had referenced before. So 1.6 is the target number that we've been working on right now. But we are concerned about the possibility that there would be additional state aid drawback. As most of you saw, or some of you may have seen, the governor indicated on Sunday that he may in fact ask for an additional 50% reduction in school aid. Well, for Oswego, that's over $6 million. He rolled back that on Monday and suggested perhaps the reduction would be in the ballpark of 20%, which is still devastating to us. However, how and when and if those rollbacks occur at all is still very unknown. I shared a slide with the board and with our community at our last meeting of the three times where the governor may ask for permission from the legislature to do a state aid pullback. And the first is the most significant, and that's between April 1st and April 30th. So the creation of an actual budget to come forth is much later, obviously, than other years because of the shutdown related to COVID-19. But more importantly, it's because until May 1st, we don't really know what our revenue number is. So right now we're creating some scenarios for a $1.6 million reduction in the budget, but we're preparing for a much greater number. So the actual budget presentation for a workshop with the board would, in public, would occur after May 1st. A budget adoption by the board or a public vote has still not been determined, but if that were to occur, it wouldn't happen before June 3rd. So I think it's important to point out to the public right now that we're doing what we typically have always done, and that is try to create a revenue-based budget that doesn't artificially infuse our budget with cash that is in fact a Band-Aid on a one-year issue, when really using reserves and fund balance is the gift that keeps on giving. Some districts probably will need to use reserves and fund balance in order to fill the gaps that they're facing this year. But we know from prior years, before this administration, that the regular use of reserves and fund balance to build your budget is an artificial means of creating revenue. Because unless that money is always available, it's not a sustainable practice. If we were to use $1 million in reserves this year, should we have that number, that creates a $1 million gap in next year's budget because it's not a sustainable revenue source. So once again, we will do our very best to build a budget that is not infused with fund balance or reserves. Currently, all districts across New York State are in a holding pattern relative to creating their actual budgets to come forward. We had a chiefs meeting yesterday, all 9 component school districts in Mr. Todd, and we're all doing the same thing. We're holding our cards very close because the types of cuts that will be required in order to fill a gap like ours in many districts has an impact on personnel. And we're going to be very, very thoughtful and careful not to create any undue concern until May 1st when we know what that real number is. However, I will share those specific numbers and some ideas for the board to think about later this evening. So the $1 million cut budget gap that I'm referencing does not reflect any additional pullbacks that the governor may request, but right now, May 1st is the date that we're focused on. The second area that I'd like to talk about briefly is food service. We always talk about food service. I've been sending the board some photos and videos and updates as I can. You know that we moved from a lot of prepackaged food products to homemade foods, and the feedback from families has been tremendous about that. The quality of the food that we're creating in-house is very good. But one thing that Matt asked me to share with the board tonight is that he's been working with the Northeast region of the American Dairy Association, and with the support and sponsorship of Eagle Beverage, the district is able to accept 4,320 gallons of milk to be distributed by food service with the help of Eagle Beverage in the upcoming weeks. So that milk will support our food service program, and those will be in gallon containers and distributed at our food sites. The third thing that I would like to talk about, and those parents and teachers who are watching the meeting tonight know that we've moved into our implementation of phase 3 of what we call essential learning plan. This goes to the continuity of learning requirement for the state education department that I've been talking about at each board meeting. The board received the letter that I sent to all teachers and administrators this morning, and they also received in a shared document 2 additional documents. One is called the K-6 Essential Learning Guidance Document, and the other is the 712 Essential Learning Guidance Document. And those are multiple page comprehensive documents that have been created by the district to guide the next phase of our essential learning, which is on a Google platform. It has elements of teacher office hours. It has recorded and hard copy lessons for teachers to present to students. And it also outlines our grading practices, our expectations for student and family engagement, as well as a lot of other information for our teachers and parents. Tomorrow, all district parents will receive an essential learning parent guidance document, which will help inform them of what this new phase of learning looks like, what the expectations are for teachers to be available for families, and to emphasize what these resources and the engagement opportunities look like for students. But what's important to point out, and was pointed out in the letter that you all received, is that we are trying to balance, a delicate balance between providing great educational opportunities through enrichment and engagement for our kids, with understanding the demands and the anxiety associated with parents trying to bolster and support learning opportunities at home without teachers sitting there with them. And I think we've struck that balance. I still am significantly concerned about equity issues, but we are moving forward into this next phase. Teachers understand that their responsibility is to provide every opportunity for every child to meet that criteria of mastery, understanding all the other challenges that they're faced with. The feedback from Okta was tremendous today. A beautiful email was received from Carrie Patney, who is the president of Okta. She responded to my letter to teachers and administrators, and we're very appreciative of the support of the Teachers Association. They've been anxious to do more, but also very anxious about doing more, because remember, while they're doing remote teaching, they're also teaching their own children at home, and they're working remotely, and their spouses are working remotely. So this is a challenge for everyone, but we're moving into a much more significant phase of essential learning.
Dean,
Yes.
I, as well as I'm sure other board members, have been getting calls about not putting out any new learning materials for our students, especially elementary schools, what I'm hearing. I don't know what other board members are hearing. I think what you're saying now, and I knew you said last week or last meeting that we were going to move into this phase, and now I am assuming we are. Will that letter be available for people other that don't have students?
The letter to teachers and administrators won't be posted on the website. However, the letter that will go home tomorrow to parents including that parent guidance document, will be put on our website for anyone to see. And it will be very similar to the document that's received by teachers, because we want everyone to be receiving the message. But it's important for parents not only to understand how to access the learning, but also what our philosophy is around this. And none of this is intended to create hardships or burdens for parents and students. Our job is to provide every opportunity for students to pass. Failing is not an option. Some districts are talking about pass-fail. We're talking about pass and meeting a basic criteria to be successful. Otherwise, we are grading and evaluating the situation. That's what the guidance from the state education department has been, and we have always followed the SED guidance to the T. I know there has been some questions and concerns. From my perspective, I think it's been mostly 7 through 12, but we're trying to balance that very small feedback. It's been more in the last week with what we're seeing in the media and what's being shared from other districts who moved very quickly into remote learning, and now they're backing up a little bit because the level of frustration for families was tremendous. And I hope that by rolling it out thoughtfully, the way we have is the best way. I also would be remiss if I didn't say publicly that the online resource bank that our teachers have worked hard to create for students for the first 6 weeks of learning were amazing. Those resources were really, really good. And that was under the instruction that there would be no new instruction. Well, now we're moving into phase 3, where there will be, in fact, new instruction, but that will come with a whole set of other challenges for families. I would encourage families to continue to provide opportunities for their kids to be creative and to look to expand their horizons around their own home community in other ways than the online learning. There are a lot of things that children can be engaged in and that parents and students can be engaged in every day to expand their inquiry, to do things that they're interested in and maybe never had an opportunity to do, to read more, to do a project outside, to do other things that do require comprehension and scientific inquiry and mathematics and writing and research. I'm proud of the work that our teachers and administrators have done. I'm tremendously proud of the documents that were created this week, largely guided by Carrie and Heidi. And I know that parents are going to, I'm hopeful that parents will like this next phase.
Dean, can we, pardon me, I didn't mean to do that. Can we get a press release out to, or have we, or could do an article with the paper in order to reinforce that messaging within the community?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know we're getting it out on Facebook, we have it on the website, but those are passive or people we're already connected to. But if we wanted to reach out to the general public in that respect, could we do that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Dean,
Yeah, go
also,
ahead.
the parent resource that's coming tomorrow, is that coming via email or hard copy?
It would be just like my last significant robocall that was also accompanied by a letter.
Okay.
So there will be a robocall to families tomorrow talking about phase 3 of our essential learning plan. And then they will also receive a document through our distribution. We'll be able to send a hard copy document. And it'll reference on the robocall that for families that are not able to access those documents remotely, that they will be available at the feeding sites.
And then just I don't want to get into too much of the specifics because that's coming, obviously, but you mentioned Google platforms.
Yes.
And will the whatever the teaching looks like, will it be recorded as well so that kids who may have a conflict with the timing will be able to access it later?
Yes, in fact, oh, I'm sorry. That's a very good question. Many of the lessons will be prepared and presented in video style.
Okay.
So the students will always be able to access those lessons and do them at their own leisure. And then there'll be performances tasks that they'll be asked to either complete or submit, or maybe the parent would be asked to take a photo of a project the child had completed and email it to the teacher. It's a very new learning environment that is going to be new for us and challenging for them and for teachers. But I'm excited about moving into the next phase. I do still have some concerns about it, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll continue to adapt.
Thanks.
Oh,
Any other questions about that?
okay. Next is the consent agenda. Special Education Board report of April 7th and April 21st, 2020. Minutes of the regular meeting of March 31st, 2020, April 14th, 2020. District financial statements, 7/1 to 3/31/2020. Treasurer's report, March 2020. Fund balance projection. Budget status report, March 2020. Oswego High School extracurricular report, March 2020. Could I have a motion?
Move them.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we'll move to personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
Hello, everyone. We do have a number of retirements this evening, so I'm going to read the one general retirement recommendation, and then I will go through and read each individual person's name and their years of service. Upon the presentation and recommendation of Dr. Guai, we ask that the Board of Education accept the following retirements. Whereas the following individuals were employed continuously by the Oswego City School District, and whereas they admirably served the students and staff of the Oswego City School District with their full commitment to their responsibilities and worked in partnership with their fellow employees, and with their full service and dedication to the best interests of all the students of the Oswego City School District. Now therefore be it resolved that the Oswego City School District hereby recognizes that their service was an asset to our students and staff of our school district, and we express gratitude and sincere appreciation for their years of service. The first is Kathleen Batchelor, who is a teaching assistant and has worked for our school district since September 3rd, 2002. Karen, do you want me to do all of them and then one vote at the end? Okay. The second, Cynthia Herman, who is a teaching assistant and has been with us since September 22nd, 1999. The third is Michelle Lloyd, who is a math teacher at the Oswego High School and who has been with us since September 1st, 1992. Deborah Mazurek, who is one of our instrumental and music teachers at the Oswego Middle School, who has been with us since September 1st, 1987. Dr. Carol Naron, who is one of our science and physics teachers at the Oswego High School, who has been with us since September 1st, 2001. Susan Olinsky, a music teacher at Minetto School, who has been with us since September 1st, 2002. John Rice, an elementary classroom and AIS teacher at Fitzhugh Park, who's been with us since September 1st, 1988. Nancy Richardson, a social studies teacher at the Oswego High School, who's been with us since September 1st, 1987. Judith Williams, a teaching assistant for the school district, who has been with us since September 4th, 2001. And Rebecca Woods, an art teacher from Riley School, who has been with us since September 1st, 2006. Congratulations to you all.
Congrats.
Motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to thank every single one of those teachers for their dedication and their hard work. There's a lot of good folks in that list.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Number 11, a support staff recommendation, resignation, Gina Stevens Taylor, food service helper part-time, effective April 1st.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And 12, our permanent support staff recommendation, Amber Holly, teacher aide part-time at Fitchie Park, and Timothy Wizarek, computer specialist at the Education Center.
Motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
One is our annual transfer of taxes for collection to the city chamberlain for the 2019-2020 school year. Two is a donation to Fitchie Park School from Exelon from their employee engagement program in the amount of $924.96. Three is a donation to Minetto School from the Garrett Dunsmore Memorial Foundation for $2,000 to help with their playground fund. And four is a budget transfer for Fitchie Park School from their supervision account to their BOCES account.
Motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we'll move to items from the board. Would any board members have any items tonight?
Yeah, I just want to thank Eagle Beverage for stepping up and doing what they're doing for our food service program. They've been a great community partner. I noticed they've done a couple other good things, and it's great to see that in this time of trial, some of our community members are stepping up, and they're going through a lot of the same things we're all going through, but together we'll make it.
Yep. Aaron, there were a couple other small announcements that I forgot to mention because I was caught up with the instruction. But I wanted to also say that, put a shout out and a thank you to one of our high school teachers, Mr. Richardson, who you all know is an officer with the National Guard. He has been called to duty to help during the coronavirus. And I think it's important that we recognize his service to not only our students, but to our country. Also on, let's see, I lost the other one, sorry. I'll interrupt again if it comes back.
It'll come to you, Dean. I wanted to add, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I wanted to add to what Sam was saying, and Dean, just to clarify, the Northeast Dairy Association is donating that milk, right? We're not purchasing it.
No, it's free.
So grateful to them as well. And I wanted to thank the public who have reached out and given us feedback, positive, constructive feedback. It's been very helpful, I think, to as we try to construct this new path of learning. And again, thank our faculty and leadership for all they're doing for that as well. And I wanted to ask a question. Have we reached out to Roma for these Google Meets? Should we maybe do that?
I don't think we have reached out to her for the Google Meets, but she and I do text each other in email.
Okay.
I'd be happy to invite her though.
Yeah, I think we should give her the opportunity. She may or may not want to, but at least she could have the opportunity.
Karen, you got that?
Yep, I do.
I do remember the other item, and I think it's kind of important. I knew it was happening on Monday, but then it slipped my mind. On Monday, Tori Tripp and I will record another special edition of the Tori and Dean Show here in the WBUC studio. And we're going to talk all about the new Essential Learning Plan and a whole host of other topics. And that will be on the district website as well as Channel 16 and on Facebook. And Tori will be asking a series of questions since this all has developed we recorded a Tori and Dean show in week 2 of our closure, and that was very widely viewed. In fact, it was the highest viewership that we had for any Dean and Dane show or Tori and Dean show, and we felt it was time to do another update for the community, talk about issues that high school students might be concerned about, and also have another opportunity to roll out our essential learning plan for parents.
Dean, are our meetings, now that we're meeting this way, are they televised live, or where are they? Can they be viewed, I guess my question.
They are televised live, and then they're also put on the district website for anyone that would like to watch them again or at a different time.
Okay. Thank you.
But right now, we are live.
Right. I just want to say one thing too, Dean, just to go back to earlier, you had said we're adapting. And I just think that's so important because that's what we're doing. And in the meetings right now, in this whole situation that we're in, and it's a great learning opportunity, unfortunately, but it's a teaching moment. And as we go through this and adapt, it's part of life and it's what we do. And I think that we're going to come out of this, and the more we work together on it, the better we'll be on the other side. But I just to keep that in mind all the time. It's just positive adaptation. We're changing to adapt to the situation.
I appreciate that, and it's so true. I mean, nothing that we do from day to day is anything like we've ever done before. Not for anyone, but it's particularly true in education and public education, because we are essential, and we have folks coming to work every day so that others don't have to. And we're trying to create enriching learning experiences for students and family. But as with any decision we've ever made in my superintendency, we always try to make those decisions in the best interest of every child and to do no harm to kids and families. We've never done it before, so we've tried to roll it out very methodically. And we're learning, and we've made missteps, but we have no regrets in terms of anything we've done with feeding, curriculum, or childcare.
Dean,
Maybe
along
Meg?
those lines, if someone does have a question or a concern, what's the most effective way to reach out? Do they go to the principal, do they go to the teacher, email, phone call?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you brought that up. If board members are in a very difficult situation because you're elected by the community and they reach out to you and ask questions, but as with anything else, it's always best to go to the closest to the front line as you can. And for parents, the questions regarding essential learning, curriculum, technology, other things that they might need, those questions are always best answered by the principal. And then if they don't get the types of answers that they'd like, then they can continue up the chain of command until they get what they need. We check we're central office administrators are at work every day, but our clerical folks are in and out. They circulate in and out, have different schedules. Karen's on site a lot, and we're available to answer questions for parents as well. We've tried to be as communicative as we can, considering that the facts change daily. But I would encourage community members and parents that have questions or concerns about curriculum, about food, about whether or not school is going to reopen, anything, to reach out to their principals first, because they have frontline information that board members might not have at that snapshot in time.
Okay, thanks.
So that's
Brandon,
a great question. For the seniors that are out there that are graduating this year, Dean, has there been any talk about, are we coming back this year? Are we not coming back this year? I think there's, my daughter's a senior, obviously, and she constantly every day asks me, have you heard anything different? Have you heard anything new? And I'm sure there's a lot of parents asking the same thing, right? As they try to figure out whether or not they're going to have graduation parties if they can, or reservations that may be out there that are possibly going to get canceled. And I know it's a little premature to talk about that stuff with things closed, but it's a question that's being asked. So you have
It's a
any?
good It's a good question. I'm glad you asked that too, and I'm happy to talk about it. We think about those things every day too, and we are doing some behind the scenes planning and anticipating those things. Those are a lot of the things that I talked with Tori about in our first telecast, and we'll talk about a lot of those things again on Monday. We're trying to balance giving students hope with giving them information that may not be accurate. You see that the governor has extended the school closure in 2-week intervals. I fully expect that very soon he will make a decision about whether school will return or not, and he won't continue to do these 2-week intervals. We expected that when they canceled Regents exams, that the probability of coming back this year would decrease significantly. We are doing some work behind the scenes to be prepared for graduation at a later date, graduation in a different way, and other significant benchmarks like top 100. We dealt with top 100 planning today. We talked about, we've reached out to the college for some alternative graduation dates. What else have we worked on? In fact, yesterday in our Zoom meeting with the Oswego County Superintendent's Group, we talked about, how graduation might look differently. And we have agreed that we wouldn't go off on our own and, have graduation at a movie theater or in a parade fashion. That when we decide, when it's been determined that a regular traditional graduation ceremony is not feasible, you will see all 9 districts do something that's very similar. I haven't given up on the possibility of an actual graduation ceremony, whether that is on June 23rd or August 15th. We don't know yet. We're not ready to pull the plug on that until we have to. But Brandon, it's a good question. We think about that every day. That's really some of the most upsetting parts of this school closure is graduating seniors, those significant milestones and opportunities that they may miss and they have missed. And I also feel very badly for retiring teachers. This is not the way they deserve or wanted to end a 30-some year teaching career where their kids go home on a Friday and they never see them again.
Yeah, agreed.
So we're sensitive to it. We think about it. We talk about it all the time. And as soon as we know more definitively, we'll roll that information out.
Well, if we at the board can help with anything, please let us know.
In the meantime, though, a shout out to anyone who was involved in getting the seniors their letter to themselves. The big packages that came to seniors, I think, probably meant more to them now than ever to be able to read through those and reminisce. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that was that's a great tradition at the Oswego High School. Those letters that they write to themselves as freshmen are typically distributed at their 100 days till graduation breakfast. Is that correct, Heidi?
Yes.
I've been at those breakfasts, and
Yeah.
the kids are all dressed up. It's exciting. That's one of the things that they'll miss. And having those mailed to their homes, I'm sure was fun for students and their families.
Lisa McPherson and Sarah Williams, as well as some other members in the English department, huge thanks to them. And one of the fun pieces about those letters is kids put items in with the letters, and finger spinners were a big thing that year as 9th graders. So Lisa shared that she stuffed a lot of spinners and gum, money, all those kinds of little trinkets in the envelope. So it was nice to see that we're trying to retain as many of those special moments for our kiddos as possible.
We're in communication with McPherson quite regularly, and I talk to her and email her frequently about graduation and other things related to graduation and events like this. Those class advisors are missing these things, and all the teachers miss the kids terribly.
That was what prompted the discussion yesterday. Was Kate saying that she got her letter in the mail. Does that mean that we're not going back to school and we're not having graduation. That's what prompted the question yesterday.
Tell her it doesn't mean that, but it means we're closer to graduation than 100 days. We missed the breakfast. Oh, I mean,
I had one item I wanted to bring up too. I think I got it right, but I think it was Katie Fierro and Ellie Delfino, sorry. They've done a great job on social media, taking the seniors and posting their pictures on social media with the colleges they're going to be attending and their majors listing. And I think they've done a really good job. And I apologize if I left somebody's name off who's been doing that. But I think that's been great, to go through to see a lot of the faces and the schools they'll be attending, because, they're not able to really like wear their sweatshirt to school one day or something, like I think was another tradition they've done in the past. So it's kind of a neat thing. I think the district's doing a great job with what they can do right now, and congratulations to you guys, because it's not easy and it's a first time. I mean, who would have ever thought? I bring this up in every Zoom meeting I'm in, but did you ever think there'd be a day where you can say, yeah, well, that's just not going to happen? It's just so weird, to think about that. Anyways,
Yeah.
Congratulations to who's ever putting that together, but I think it's Katie and Allie.
we have a meeting next week with Rebecca Trevette, who works for our PR department at City BOCES, and we're going to start generating a whole host of things like that that will be rolling out throughout the rest of the spring.
Any other items from the board members? Would the board need to move to?
I just have three things that I just wanted to bring up really quickly. The first one was, I don't know if anybody saw the Air Force Academy graduation. They did it. They didn't have audience there, but they were 6 feet apart in rows. It was done. So they did it. And the second was job postings. When did job postings stop coming to the board for approval?
About 4 years ago.
Why?
I think at the time the recommendation was that unless it was a new position, that we wouldn't get board approval to post. We talked about it on the board. Kathleen, maybe you weren't on that.
I must have been.
Right, but it was bogging down our ability to fill positions as they came available. I just had to wait for a board meeting in order to approve a posting for a position that we already had. So it was determined then that we would only get approval to post a brand new position, that the board would be informed that we were creating a new position. They would approve the posting and then it would be posted.
Okay, can the board at least be informed when you're posting positions? Because we don't know when anything's posted, and I'm always curious about what positions are being posted. I mean, I know we approved the fill, and if that was done then, but if we could just be informed of when you're posting positions, how long they're open, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we could include the postings on board docs.
Okay.
If the board wants to, I mean, it's another job for the personnel office, but there would never be a posting for a position unless you had already previously approved a resignation, termination, retirement, or some other separation. But we can do it. It's just a matter of putting paper in, uploading paper.
Okay, yeah. I'd just like to know when they're posted. And then also just going back to what you were saying about the budget and some of the information that you've messaged us. I'm curious what kind of a cost we've saved over the last month and a half with busing, since we're not doing transportation right now. Kind of a cost savings that can be maybe forwarded to next year's budget.
Yeah, it would be.
And also, just my desire in the budget, knowing that there's going to be a gap, whether it's 1.6 or more, my personal desire is that we focus on things that are the furthest away from students, that are not going to impact students, whether it's professional development. Really, Nancy, can we get a line-by-line item of what each department spends and specifics to just kind of look at, so that we can kind of gauge where some of those cuts are? I mean, because I know throughout the year we're transferring money here from this account to this account, so maybe some of those accounts can be looked at before we start looking at staffing positions that are going to impact the students.
I don't know. Certainly she can do that, but as you can imagine, we're up to our eyeballs in developing this budget right now. I don't know that we want to go back and have to try to run 50 reports. Let's talk offline about what it is that Kathleen would like. And then if it's feasible to generate it quickly, we will do that. But to go to your first comment, Kathleen, it's funny that you use that statement because I sent a directive out in a email memo to administrators on Sunday. And I said to them, I'm almost embarrassed to say this to you, but please, when you make recommendations for consideration of reductions in the budget, we always say that. Try to keep your recommendations as far from children and learning as possible. So we're on the same page. That's always what we try to do. But in the reality of it is anything that we do in our school district impacts kids. Any cut impacts kids. But to go to your point, that's exactly what we're going to try to do. But 1.6 is hard to keep away from kids.
Dean, can you speak to her cost savings question as well, only because I've received similar questions?
Yeah, I think the biggest cost savings, maybe the only cost savings that we're experiencing right now would be fuel. So Kathleen's question about fuel busing through transportation would be the one pot of money that we might be generating right now. Any budget surplus, whether it's fuel savings that are caused by the school closing, or any budget surplus, money that's left over from the 1920 budget, would be applied automatically to the 2021 budget.
Okay, but there's got to
But
be
we can put a dollar amount on it.
bus drivers, for the sporting events, all the sports that were canceled and stuff like that too. So that would, it's a little bit more than fuel.
Anything that's saved is going to go toward the new budget.
Okay.
Yep. Overtime drivers, you're right. It might be overtime. It might be drivers for a sporting event, a music, something like that. There would be some savings attached to that. It'd be hard to calculate it specifically, but at the end of the day, that's called budget surplus, and it's going toward the 2021 budget.
And again, like I said at the last meeting, I think if we're going to have a gap that size, that we pull back on getting new buses for this year, in my opinion. But we've been very successful in maintaining the fleet and updating the fleet, and to take a year off wouldn't be a big deal, I think.
Kathleen, we've already talked to Tom Gunn, and we've taken all of the buses except for 2 that are really needed off of the proposition. So we talked to Tom, and Tom said we do need a new wheelchair bus with a lift, and we do need 1 other vehicle. The bonding for those buses doesn't cost us any money in the next year's budget because we time it so that our first payment is in the next year after that. So any proposition for buses really doesn't affect next year.
Nancy, can you talk to Kathleen's question? How many buses were originally in our cyclical replacement plan for this budget?
I think we had 11,
Okay.
and now we're only proposing 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The other thing, Kathleen, to your other point about cost savings for the buses because they're not running, that also will affect your state aid coming back next year. So whatever we spend, we are aided on that for our transportation aid. So the lower your expenditures, the lower your aid reimbursement is going to be for next year, which will also affect revenue for next year.
Okay. And so out of all of our staffing, a lot of them are salaried. Who isn't getting paid right now? Do we have employees that are needing to apply, that have applied for unemployment Everybody's
No.
not salaried, some are hourly. How is that working?
Substitutes aren't being paid.
Substitutes aren't being paid. Our staff have what's called an annualized pay, which means we take a look at what their standard pay expectations were when they were working and they're receiving that pay. It's aligned to the executive order that essential staff, or we're supposed to do no harm to essential staff. Heidi might be able to talk more to it than that.
Sure, and actually, most of our more hourly type employees are working either food service, who the majority of them are working if they don't have some sort of legitimate reason to not be working under concerns regarding the virus. And David and Nancy worked out a system with the majority of our custodial and buildings and grounds crews in order to make sure that our buildings are being sanitized. So the buildings that are not currently being used that often were cleaned and then more or less closed. If anyone has to go into those buildings, they notify the principal, David and Nancy, to ensure that those rooms get re-cleaned. And then the buildings where people are in and out of a little bit more because they might be our food distribution sites, obviously then those need to be re-cleaned and sanitized frequently.
Last week we had a calendar where we allowed teachers to come into their classrooms for a 30-minute period to retrieve instructional materials as we anticipated phase 3 of essential learning. And then David had a calendar with principals so that after the assigned teachers came into their rooms, gathered their materials, didn't congregate and left, then those rooms were re-cleaned and sanitized.
Dean, I gotta believe that just as the teachers have had some personal stuff in the buildings, our students do too, especially I think the high school, the middle school. So at some point, depending on how we end up, we will have to be opening up the buildings to let those kids back in to get their personals.
Yes, and you'll remember in the first 2 weeks, we set up a system where parents could call the school during certain hours if a child had some essential items in their locker or their gym locker that they needed to be retrieved, maybe as a cell phone or a laptop computer or a coat. And those materials were retrieved for the student, and then they were passed to that student at the main entrance. If we get to the point where we don't anticipate schools going to reopen this school year, we have a plan that's being developed now where students will be allowed to go to the school to gather their personal belongings from not only their regular lockers in grades 7 through 12, but also their physical education lockers or athletic lockers. Also, there may be some materials that elementary students need to gather from school as well. We did go through all the classrooms and we had to do the sniff test in some schools and locker areas because students leave food. And then we wanted to make sure that we weren't having 8-10-week-old school lunches in a locker. But yeah, Sam, we will have to empty those lockers in a very methodical way.
Could someone check my son's locker? Because God only knows what was in that.
Whose was that?
My son.
I'm gonna say I don't want the PE locker contents back.
No. No. After a while, they do dry out and they don't stink so bad. I forgot we're live.
Would there be any other items from the board? Would there be a need to move to executive session tonight?
Yes,
Reason?
personnel.
Will there be a need for a vote after executive session?
No.
Could I have a motion to move to executive?
Karen,
Yeah.
I think there's, just so we can be specific, I think there's actually 3 personnel matters.
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.